Okay, so I actually did the random events phase already. Rolled the die, one random event comes up, rolled a 6 and something else, it doesn't really matter what, brings me on unrest table D. Over here it ended up as a 2 and a 2 or something like that. Ended up giving me Cuba. Now Cuba is of course Spanish at this point. And Spain's going to react to this. They kind of automatically throw all their excess infantry units into there to try to suppress it. If that'll happen during the normal play, I can move them now. But if they fail, the area then becomes an uncontrolled area, which would be a problem. That would open up something kind of tasty near the U.S., and the U.S. does not want other people, other colonies to be handed off over there. If I can find this, the bonus victory point summary. For the United States, if no one has a control marker on map W, ignoring Canada, Guinea, Hawaii, and Newfoundland, they get 10 points. So they have an incentive to prevent other people from getting in there because, well, quite honestly, Spain, they get a chance to defeat. They probably won't have an easy shot at defeating one of the other great powers. They could probably take on something like Italy if they went into Cuba. But in England or France or Germany, the U.S. would have a hard job getting the territory back under those conditions. Of course, maybe they could do it through a treaty. Who knows? Alright, now we go to the admin phase, and at this point we're just really filling these in. Now the main thing that's happening here, because at the beginning of the game all the numbers are set and they're actually already present on these sheets to indicate what you have, the only thing that isn't set for the first turn is the colonial office. So I'm going to have to roll the colonial offices for some countries. Let's take the U.S. Nope, the U.S. doesn't have one. They have to roll because, unlike most of the weaker powers, they have this possession over here in Alaska. So they actually do have to roll. And that's just going to be done by rolling on this table. And it's... no, not that table. Yeah, this table. And you just cross-reference the country, roll a die, bang, 5. It's going to be 25 bucks. Off the table. You mark that down under colonial office, and then you'll have a total of 55 here. And 55 minus 21 means that I have 34 bucks. You come over here and you mark that on the thing. Now I'm missing some counters for this game, not many. One that I know I'm missing, though, is one of the money markers. I may also be missing some troops, or I thought I was missing a merchant fleet, which is a big thing at one point. So, you know, it's possible I may run into countermix limitations that don't really apply, but I think I've got a pretty complete set still. I used to play this in my dorm room, of all places. Now you can imagine a dorm room probably, you know, it was a two-bedroom room, two-person room, but it was a very old dorm. So the room was actually fairly large. It was bigger than the room that I'm in right now, which is shocking. I look at the dorm rooms nowadays and they got like 4 people in a room this size. And I'm like, my God, they pack them in. No wonder. And they probably charge as much as to live in a place like this. You know, 2 people sharing a 2-bedroom place or something. I see the prices for the rentals around here, and they're, you know, probably lower. There's no question that this is a better environment. I can't believe, you know, some people talk about, oh yeah, students living in these kind of ritzy places, and it is a nice place, there's no question. It's almost like a resort here. But they're paying the same as they would in the dorms to live under much better circumstances. I lived in such a place over in Eugene, Oregon when I was in grad school there. Yeah, we just diverted from the topic. Anyway, I had a nice big desk in there, and when my roommate wasn't going to be around for a weekend or something, I remember setting this up a couple of times. This was one of a few games that I brought up there. It was probably the biggest thing that I thought I could get done in a day or two. I would stay home from class. I remember skipping class on a day to play this. Just stuff like that. It's not a terribly long game. Anyway, that's the economic phase, and I wasted a lot of video for nothing. I'll do the rest of them, and then we'll go and see how the minor powers activate. Okay, so for minor powers activating, Belgium's always the first one. We're going to ignore them because they're a player at this point. I've had to use them on the Russian track just to use some money markers for them. Help me keep track of things. We actually have 9 powers in the game at this point instead of the usual 8, so I have to kind of twist my normal assignment for who goes where at any time. I'll probably use a 10-sided die instead of an 8-sider. Okay, so we're going to look at the Netherlands, and I've lost my dice somewhere. I used to have a whole bunch of little tiny SPI dice that I would use for this. It was one of the few games I used them for because mainly the random events chart. Okay, let's take a look at the Netherlands. First we roll to see if they're active. They roll a 2, so they're active. So now they roll 2 dice to see where they're active. And we get a 9. They're active in Kaiser Wilhelm's land. Now they're going to take the best thing they can there. Kaiser Wilhelm's land, over here, not a terribly valuable place. And we end up just dropping a Dutch possession and taking one of their troops out of the home country and putting it there. I don't believe they have to... Let me make sure. Let me make sure that they have to roll. So I'm glad I checked. They don't have to roll to see if they can win, but they do only get a protectorate there, which means people can put interest there. This is not a big deal to anyone, but, well, whatever. Let's check Portugal and Spain. No. And no. And now, I can't resolve the Spanish unrest right now because no one else is allowed to go in there until and unless Spain gets defeated. So after minor powers, we shift down to movement status change. And at this point, I have to kind of think a little bit about how I'm going to handle things. And then I'll come back and start handling things for my solitaire game. In a regular game, people would just be sitting there picking up what they want. Okay, so if this were a plotted game like Europa Universalis, for placement, it would be trivial. In fact, there, usually people don't have the ability to interact with one another in terms of where they choose to go. Unfortunately, this is a game where mostly the world is open to whoever wants to use it. So that causes problems in a multiplayer game, but even in a solo game, it causes an even more extreme problem. What my solution has always been, and I'll continue to do this, I'm not absolutely thrilled with it, is I roll a die. In this case, I'll use a 10-sider because I got 9 powers. On a 0, the person with the most cash gets picked. And basically, I randomly select a country, and they have to do something. If they are willing to end their turn at that point, they can refuse to do something. Basically, at some point or another, we'll get to where very few people have money or whatever, and it'll come down to a point where, okay, are you going to do, or are you not? But at the early stages of the game, people are just going to be rolled randomly. That's to kind of simulate the dynamics. When you're sitting at the table, quite often you can delay, but other people can kind of point their finger at you and say, whoa, why aren't you doing anything? I'm not going to do anything either. And that kind of dynamic quite often causes things to kind of break apart. Now, it doesn't fall down to a random person moves. Quite usually, people run out and grab the things they really, really want. and that they're not afraid of other people placing in. But the truth of the matter is, the longer you can hold your money in this sucker, in terms of the placement phase, the better off you are. And therefore, no one wants to play. It's clearly to your advantage to wait. And so you've got to put some kind of meta rule in place to handle that kind of situation. We always had a time limit. Whatever that time limit was, oh yeah, everybody was sitting around, and then the guy who was holding off, say England or whatever, or France, oh, my 2 minutes are almost up, I'll place here. And now I got 2 more minutes for everybody to kind of assess. Well, that created nothing but problems. We only had one player who was really a problem with that, but if you look at it, it is the way to play the game. All right, so I'll start that off, and we'll take a look at someone. We'll start with the U.S. as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Belgium has to place first. Now this is a problem. Belgium, as a neutral power, almost always ends up getting the Congo. They have their influence there. Other powers will support them in their bid for it. But in this game, giving Belgium, with their one divisor, anything that rich seems almost impossible. So now the question becomes, well, where can you get away with as Belgium? And, well, I'm going to go odd, go for the Congo, even, go for something else. I'm going to go for that Congo place if I have the cash. I have $15 and an influence. That means if I spend $10 of that 15, I can get one of these. I want to put some troops in the Congo. Doesn't have to be many. We can look at the combat results chart to see where this decision is. But basically, 2-1 means I might take an exchange as kind of my worst solution, which means I lose a strength point. If I send 4 out there, I get the 3-1, which is slightly less chance of losing a unit. But then I have to pay maintenance for those troops. And now I put this out here in the Congo. I drop a question mark in it to indicate it's not established. And that also indicates that I have to record it still. All the record keeping kind of takes place as things get established. Alright, well that's our first power. And let's see who goes next. 7, which is going to be Germany. Now Germany's in an interesting position. One thinks of the German military as particularly powerful, but it really isn't at this point. In particular, their navy means that they can't be any kind of suitable challenge to Britain or France. What they need to do is they need some economic power. And I'm going to grab my favorite thing. For $10, I'm going to take my Germans and I'm going to go grab an influence marker in Brazil. Brazil's very good. It's a 9-value territory, which means that's going to be worth $18 minus what? 5 for an influence brings it to $13. It would only be $9 as an interest. I think that break even is 5 or 6 or something like that. Areas less than that, you don't really want influence in except for the political value that it gets. I'm going to play some others, and I'll come back when some interesting stuff starts happening. But right now, players are just kind of... A lot of the powers, Germany, Japan, Russia, and Italy, are not really interested, and Belgium perhaps shouldn't be, are not really interested in acquiring territory yet, but there's problems. For example, if Italy doesn't go into Egypt early on, they may never get it. There's also the problem that most people don't have a very powerful army or navy. Even Britain doesn't. Those get a lot bigger as the game goes. So we're kind of at this weird location where Britain's able to bully people around, but they don't have a hell of a lot of money. So they can't really build up their military and bully people. They have the biggest navy by fairly clearly, but they don't have they don't have quite the weight to throw around that they later will. But on the other hand, most of the other countries will worry about building their military up. Turn 3 is usually where the challenges come. Of course, this is a challenge. So most of the players, even Britain, have been mainly just playing influences for the time. The only non-influence has been the Belgian one so far. The Brits, however, threw an influence marker into there, saying, you know what, I'm going to block this. And now they've just basically put down a marker saying, we're going to war if you do not, come up with some sort of alliance pact that scares me. What this means is the English are going to have to probably build up a military. It also kind of opens things up. I wouldn't be shocked to see Italy jump into Egypt at this point. Depending on how the mood and the sound of things is. Alright, as we're getting to the end of the placements for this turn, we've got a kind of interesting situation. First of all, Japan had a lot of money and could have kind of intervened in different places. Not in Korea so much, because there's a humongous Russian army now. That whole army can't be played into Korea, but I think at least 10 strength points can. There's a restriction on the Russian army. 30 points of it have to be in Russia or in the Balkans, essentially. I think they can go into Anatolia as well. But that means that huge Russian army can't really fight Japan directly. So that was kind of a potential for Japan to boost its interest there while other people are busy. But a lot of people are sticking influence markers in there. Could mean a British gripe at this point. It seemed safer not to, so they're just spreading their influence markers, trying to keep their options open, see how things kind of fall out on this first turn and how the second turn goes. It's a safer strategy than going for that initial challenge. Who else? Germany. Germany shifted their naval interest out of Oceania and actually out of the Mediterranean and up into the North China Sea so that they could grab into Korea too. There's very few very valuable locations, and you want to grab them. A couple of them are in South America over there. Anatolia is one, but it's not an 8-pointer, so it's not a first turn grab necessarily if you can shift your ships. And the German shipping in Oceania is just not terribly valuable. Leave that to other people. There's nothing really worthwhile there, unless you can take Britain out of, like, Australia, which is pretty damn tough. Because Australia is a supply source, so you actually have to conquer it. You can't just cut off its supply. Oh, no, it's not yet. It's just a possession right now. Canada's a supply source. Okay, but it puts us in an interesting position. Italy went and grabbed Egypt. And that gives France. France is the guy with the money right now. And they've got a tough choice. Do they want to maybe support Belgium and try to go to war with England? That's a heady undertaking. Or do they want to challenge the Italians? Or maybe come to some sort of agreement to face England later? The English built another 10-point navy. So in a sense, their move against the Congo is going to be tough for anyone to oppose. I don't think the French are going to go against that. But the Congo is very valuable for the north-south path. It's tough to get without the Congo. Let's put it that way. That's usually the location that the paths, even the east-west sometimes, although that has to be through the northeast, through the north of the continent, even that sometimes finds its easiest way through the Congo. Just because some of the coastal territory is more valuable than the crap in the center. But yeah, France is at an interesting position. No one else really is. Everybody else kind of spent their money on investment opportunities. But France hasn't gotten a die roll yet. They've been the guy who's been able to be quiet and had nothing happen. They don't have a lot of money though, only 29 bucks. Okay, so we're pretty much at the end of the line here. Everybody's put their markers down, as it were. All the money's been spent. There's a few bucks. Some people have a couple of bucks hanging out in extra places, like the English have a buck. There's nothing you can do with that when you have that. If you got a low enough divisor, maybe it helps. For example, the US has 4 bucks. That's enough money you could buy a military unit, but instead they're going to invest in victory points. They grab 1 victory point with that because they have a 4 divisor. But others just have a couple bucks left. The Austrian 2 bucks, that would be thrown in along with the German money for victory points. But the Germans spent all their money, so that didn't. Russia managed to slip into Manchuria, something Japan didn't even notice, England didn't notice, everybody forgot about Manchuria. It's a big 8-point space. They saw that towards the end. Sometimes that kind of thing happens in the game. So, now we go to colonial combat, and well, let's handle, we've got this little unrest here, and I got a pile of troops here. 3, 6, 7, 8 to 3. That's gonna put us, let's see, sorry about the quick move. 8 to 3 is gonna be 3 to 1. We get a 2, that's an orange defender retreat. That's a success for Spain. These troops are still out here, I think, for the rest of the turn, but next turn they're going to pull back, and Spain's not involved in anything, so I'm just going to put them back in the home country. Oh, no, that's allowed. No, they stay here. Yeah, they stay there because of the reaction. But they are troops that can be used for added expansion, I guess. We have one more important fight. I'll take care of this and clean it up in a moment. Over here against Egypt. No one else. Oh, we had the Belgians too. With 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's going to be a 3 to 2. It's on this larger force fighting table. And they roll a 3, which is green. That's a half exchange. So I have to lose 3 units, as it were, and I'll take that in a big unit. So this is established, sort of. It's a weird sort of situation because there is a casus belli involved in it that I'll take care of. And the French are going to get a casus belli there, but I want to take care of that later because I do all my bookkeeping kind of as I write things down. A number of the powers pulled troops out. Well, England and France pulled some troops off the board and into their home country. They both start off with some really kind of painful expenses in terms of what they have on the board. The Brits didn't pull everything off. They feel they need more of a threat to the rest of the world. But the French don't feel like Italy's likely to get a lot of help in this fight. We'll see how that works out. Okay, I gotta roll the Belgians too. After I come to that, I'll do the marker adjustments, then I'll come to the negotiation. But for now, I'm going to load this one up. This is the 1880 turn.